The couple last things I want to talk about. Dan Crenshaw was a congressman. He ended up winning. He was a Republican who won in Texas. You might have heard of him. He has an eye patch. He was a war veteran. And this guy on SNL, I don't really watch SNL or know like any of the people's names on there anymore because it hasn't been funny since like Chris Farley and Adam Sandler. But yeah, there was this huge story because this guy on SNL made fun of him. Basically, I think the joke was something like, oh, yeah, here's a picture of this guy, and he had an eye patch, and he's like, yeah, believe it or not, he's not some, like, low-budget porn star or something like that, secret agent porn star or something like that, right? Now, first off, I thought that, like, it was absurd that people, like, you'll hear me rant on this a lot, like, dude, it's just a joke. If you didn't like it, okay, it was a joke. It doesn't mean the guy, is against all veterans or anything like that. I just didn't care. It's just like, okay, it was a joke. Maybe you thought it was in poor taste. He was trying to be funny. But granted, they're terrible at it. And I'll talk more about that. It's not edgy. It's safe comedy, like to make jokes like that. That's where I get offended. I'm offended that comedy sucks now. That's where I'm at. I'm offended that SNL, man. I remember like staying home from school and watching Kids in the Hall and SNL like all day on Comedy Central. Like when I would stay home from school, it was the greatest. Like that influenced me a lot. Those comedians were hilarious. So, yeah, I am old. So it's a shame to me that it's not funny anymore. It's more concerned about being political than funny. But again, I don't think there was any reason to get up in arms about this joke. So anyways, this guy Crenshaw that was the butt of that joke came out and was like, I'm not seeking an apology, but you basically should like think of veterans. I thought his stance was really cool, right? It was like, yeah, that's pretty good. But I remember I told my wife, I was like, hey, you know what this guy should do? It would have been great publicity for him to actually go on SNL and kind of ham it up a little. And that's exactly what he did last Saturday. So the guy who made the joke, I forget what his name is, but he was like, yeah, I apologize. This guy's a war hero, blah, blah, blah. And then Crenshaw comes out and kind of ribs the guy a little and is like, yeah, happy Veterans Day. We should all come together and stop trying to be divisive. And it's an absolute, like, again, always looking at things two ways, like morally and strategically. Morally, it's great, right? He's absolutely right. Like, good for him for not, for being able to be like, it was a joke. I can come on and laugh too, make fun of this other guy a little. That's great. Like, I really like that. I thought that was great. But strategically, that's so smart, right? Like, he comes off looking awesome. It's like, yeah, even left-wing people now are be like, maybe I wouldn't vote for this guy, but what a cool guy. He didn't, like, get a big chip on his shoulder. And I think if we start to do more things like that, like, for God's sakes, learn to laugh again, maybe we could all come together. Like, and I'll give you an example of someone. So there's this guy, he's a postmodernist, which if you've heard me talk, postmodernist is kind of the philosophical backing for like a lot of these identitarian politics that you see in like cultural Marxism. But his name's Slavoj Žižek, right? And I learned of this guy in debate. He's a really interesting guy. He's got a neat movie called A Pervert's Guide to Ideology. And what he does is he takes movie clips and then kind of in this really interesting way like inserts himself into the movie and talks about his idea of the philosophy behind it, right? So anyways, I saw this interview. By the way, I disagree with like 95% of what Zizek says, but I thought he was interesting to watch. If you can get by his weird accent, he's got a very like lispy accent. It's hard to follow him. But anywho, check that movie out if you ever get bored. Here's my big sale pitch for it. It's called A Pervert's Guide to Ideology. It used to be on Netflix, but you can probably find it online somewhere. My big sales pitch is the first movie that he kind of talks about the philosophy of is They Live, which is one of the greatest movies of all times. Stars Roddy Piper. It's just a fantastic movie. I think it was great. So, yeah, it's worth checking out. But anyways, I saw this interview with Zizek once where he's talking about, I forget exactly where he's from. I don't know. I'm just going to sound like a fool trying to come up with it. But a lot of other, let me backtrack. Let me say this. I've seen other comedians talk about this where it's like from different countries where they're like, it's funny because you get to the United States and race is such a big issue. But in reality, in other areas of the world, like things are so racially tinged. You could look at identical to the racial group you don't like. It's like literally like you just happen to be from the west of the country and we're from the east, so we hate each other, So Zizek's like kind of talking about this. He meets someone who's like of a tradition, whatever his ethnicity is, traditionally clashed with his ethnicity, And so, they're like intellectuals or whatever, and they are piling around for a couple weeks doing like academic stuff and things of that nature. And so Zizek's like, one day he goes out and gets in the car after like a couple weeks, and this guy's basically like silent, and then he looks at them, and I'm not going to retell the joke, but he basically is like, let's just assume that Zizek's Slavic, and he's like, how to, like, okay, it's a crude joke, but he basically makes a joke that has to do with masturbation. He's basically like, how do Slavs masturbate? They dig a hole. They let someone dig a hole and then wait for the earth to rotate while they, put their thing in the hole. And because the joke is that the Slavs are super lazy, right? And Zizek starts laughing, and he's like, he understands at that moment of cultural importance, because that was the icebreaker that let them know, like, yeah, we're friends. They made this kind of crude, insensitive joke, and their ability to laugh at themselves, and then Zizek like makes a joke back to him that's equally crude. That breaks this tension, right? I think that's one of the reasons I love comedy, right? The more you could laugh at yourself and laugh at others, right, the less animosity there is if you learn to just kind of make fun of yourself. So I think that like things like that, like Crenshaw going on there, is absolutely fantastic. And I guess a tip of the cap to the guy from SNL too that was willing to leave him come on and make fun of him somewhat too. So but what really choice did he have? Because he had to try to save face. Anyways, yeah, that I just thought that was a neat thing. What I will say in culture, right? Like, I don't really care. It seems as if people want to jump on. Let me put it this way. Like, I like a lot of what I like in culture. Like I've said before, I'm kind of like a contrarian, right? So like when I was young, I was into metal music and then punk music and things like that. Like I was against what I thought the popular culture was at the time. Now it ends up being laughable, as everyone knows. But that was cool. Like, that was edgy. There were the culture, and then there was counterculture. And the problem I have today is like culture is totally dominated by the left. And so it's not edgy to then just be a part of that, right? So when SNL comes out and it's like, yeah, we're just going to keep bashing on Republicans, like, that's not edgy, which is fine, because you don't have to be edgy to be funny. But if you're not funny and you're not edgy, then what are you doing, right? And like, they have this kind of like moral like superiority, like this intellectualism where it's like, yeah, we're edgy, we're SNL, we went there, we went after Trump. Yeah, everyone goes after Trump. There's a great video you can find on YouTube of Norm Macdonald. He's actually with Roseanne, and I think it was from the reality show Last Comic Standing. And Roseanne and Norm were judges, right? And so if you haven't seen the show, which I never really have either, I just saw this YouTube clip, but the premise is basically, it's like any of these cooking shows or whatever you see. You have start off with like 12 comedians, and then each week you eliminate one. So they'll have to do a set or whatever, and then the judges decide who stays and who goes. So this guy gets up on stage, and I believe like he just starts, I think he's gay, and he starts bashing the Bible, the Christian Bible, and he's just like, well, if you're going to quote from the Bible, then I'll quote from my book, my holy book, Harry Potter, and he makes all these jokes where he's just bashing Christianity. And then Roseanne's like, yeah, I thought this was great, and Norm's like, yeah, I didn't think it was funny at all. And everyone starts laughing because they think Norm's joking, and he's like, no, it's not edgy to bash Christianity. It's lazy. Everybody does it. In fact, it would be edgy to defend Christianity with comedy. And Norm is 100% right. Like, that's exactly how I feel. To the point where Johnny Rotten, who used to be in the Sex Pistols, right? I saw an interview with him, like, in the UK, where he's like, dude, to be punk now would be to defend Trump. Because all culture is against Trump. So if you want to be counterculture, you're like, yeah, I'll defend this guy then, right? And that's, like, how I feel. I think that it's gotten so ridiculous. One of my favorite bands was a band called the Drive-By Truckers, which I still really like them. Again, as I'm saying all this, as I said in my last video, I think that I just learned to swallow the pill and say, you know what, a lot of these groups I like, pretty much all of culture is dominated by the left, so if I ever want to consume any of culture, I'm just going to have to ignore their political stance or their ideological stance and enjoy the entertainment for what it is. So that's basically what I do. So when I'm complaining about band like the Drive-By Truckers, they're one of my favorite bands. They still are. I really like them. But, they came out, like, they were kind of always just this kind of, like, like a punk version of like folky bluegrass country music, right? Like, and just talking about how hard life would be, you know, to be someone who like lived in these rural areas and was a farmer and like lived in communities like that. And like, I identified with that. I thought it was cool because it's something you didn't hear a lot. And then when Trump got elected, you know, now they're singing songs about Charlottesville and how racist Trump is and how the wall's a bad idea and things like that. And it's like, okay, man, good for you guys. How edgy. Right? Woo! You agree with everyone else in Hollywood. That's cool, right? And they're all hypocritical, by the way. Like, I've mentioned this before too, right? Like, I remember being really into like going to Warped Tour and stuff and being really into punk music when they had put out albums like Punk Against Bush, George Bush, Warmonger. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm with you, you know? And then Obama comes in and he's bombing countries. He drops more bombs than Bush. He's overthrowing Libya. He's dropping bombs in Yemen, all these other countries, trying to overthrow Syria, right? Okay, where you at now? No effects, right? Where you at now, all you punk fans? Hey, Bruce Springsteen, right? You were rocking against Bush. Where are you now? We're silent for 4 years. Oh, we're silent for 8. Call us when a Republican gets elected. Then we'll get back on our high horse again. So, you know, it's just laziness. I think that, like, all these cultural people that come out, and you saw it, like, before the midterms, like, oh, Taylor Swift comes out and endorses a Democrat. Oh, you know, this person, you know, Rihanna came out and endorsed, Beyonce endorsed. It's like, yeah, we know. It's all Democrat. By the way, and this is how you can tell, like, it's clear. Like, you could look at Hollywood or the music industry and things, and you can see how left-leaning it was. And I'm sure you could also see the same with the media as well. But just in case you had any idea, like, look at how, like, almost every major newspaper also backs Democrats. One of the websites I like to go to for news is The Hill. thehill.com. I actually like them. They lean left wing, but I think they're pretty fair on a lot of their stuff on their just general news coverage. But they would like put up before the midterm, they would be like, you know, Tallahassee paper endorses Democrats. Oh, 3 major newspapers in Iowa endorse Democrat. Like, there was a news story every day like that. It's like, yeah, that's not news now. We know. Yes, all the media is for the Democrats. Got it. We know that. That's not news. But they put it up there every day like this was a news story. So I just thought that was funny. So the last thing I had written down was, so I got back on Facebook. I dropped Facebook for like 5 years. I kind of explained this in my last video because I was putting my name in for jobs and stuff. I just don't care now. I have a good job, and like I said, I don't think I had anything too bad on Facebook or anything like that. But getting back into Facebook, I am such a moron when it comes to I don't understand, like, I don't know how social media or technology works. So the reason I got on Facebook was I was like, oh, well, if I'm trying to reach people through this YouTube channel, it's really hard to get subscribers and things like that. That's why I keep shilling out, hey, you guys should recommend, subscribe and recommend me to other people. Hey, you know, I feel dirty even saying that. But anyways, it's hard to get, like, initially get subscribers. So I was like, oh, yeah, you have these built-in friends on Facebook. Maybe 1 or 2 of them would subscribe or whatever. So you go in there, and it's cool. I've talked to some old people that I haven't talked to in a while, so that was interesting. But right out of the gate, like, so because I put my Facebook channel on my YouTube or my Facebook page on my YouTube channel, I started to get friend requests from people I didn't know, and I was like, oh, this must just be someone. So you know, you get the first one, and then all of a sudden it's like 4 or 5 more, and then I get like 20 people, and they're like from Morocco, and they're from, you know, all kinds of places, and I was like, wow, that's cool. I got people listening to me from all over, and it took my wife to be like, hey, you idiot, like, you're being scammed. Like, I had no clue. I just assumed, like, how cool is that? What, you know, with those 8 people watching, it's not 8 people that I know in real life or that, you know, from Above Top Secret or something that I talk to. No, it's just these random people from Morocco. Woo, that's awesome, you know. Yeah, so such an idiot. I'm definitely going to be the person, you know, giving money to a Nigerian prince when I'm an old man and then complaining about getting scammed and stuff. I can see that coming. So, yeah, I don't really have anything else written down to talk about. If anyone had anything, what's up, Big Berg? If anyone had anything that they wanted, like a news story or any questions they had about any of my stances real quick, I'd probably stay on for like another 10 minutes. So, if anyone has anything in the chat, let's see if I missed anything. Yeah, me personally, Gimme Gimmes is great, right? I still listen to them a lot. Yeah, Israel and Palestine, right? Like, yeah, you're right. They're fighting over religion. I had no idea how intense. Well, obviously you know how intense it is, but I ended up meeting someone, and like I won't get into too many specifics, but you know I met someone who was on like the Palestine side of that conflict, and you know I'll pick your brain. I don't care if I agree with you or not, and I was shocked at the amount of hatred towards Israel, and I'm not saying. Like, I'm sure if I talked to someone who was on the Israeli side of that conflict that they would be just as intense about it, right? But, you know, I was like, oh, well, you know, even if you hate all the Israelis, you know, a conflict could kill Israeli children. That would be bad. And this person told me, yes, but military service is compulsory in Israel, so every child you kill is just a future soldier. And, like, that really puts into perspective just how crazy like that conflict is, right? Like when you could justify killing children because it's just stopping more enemies in the future, right? That's a crazy situation. So, yeah, I mean it's like yeah, and that's just it, right? Like one of the things Ron Paul said, and you saw this a lot with our founding fathers, where it was like. Trade agreements and relationships with everyone, alliance with none, right? And the reasoning for that was once you get into an alliance with someone, then their enemies are your enemies, right? And so you're beholden basically to if they take bad actions, you basically have to have their back. Like story about me, I got jumped at a frat once by like 12 people. It was beat pretty bad. It's not worth going into. It was just. I didn't think I did anything wrong, but anyways, I got beat up by this frat, right? And a couple of years go by, and the frat ended up getting disbanded or whatever. But I run into this guy, and we're talking, and we hung out like 2 or 3 days. Seemed like a cool guy. And then somehow this story comes up, and he didn't show up for like a week or two. And then he shows up, and he had like a case of beer with him. And I'm like, hey, what's up? And he's like, hey, I just wanted to let you know that like I went to a different school, and I was in that same frat, like at a different school. And, you know, I feel really terrible. And I was like, oh, dude, it's water under the bridge. I'm not worried about it. You don't have to feel bad or whatever. And then we got to talking, and he was like, you know, the problem is like when you sign up for something like that, you're, you know, figuratively brothers with the people in this fraternity. So if there's one of them that's starting fights, even if they're in the wrong, you have to have their back, right? That's kind of what like alliances are. That's kind of like what an alliance with Israel is, right? So any bad action they take, we have to back them up. And we end up getting mired in this conflict that it's like, we just have no business. Now, having said that, I think that culturally, the animosity towards Israel is way overblown, right? Like there seems to be, I guess, put it this way, supporters on both sides make it seem like only the other side does crappy things. And I don't think that's the truth. And we see like in academia, at least, that the pendulum is heavily switched towards Israel's always the bad guys, and it's nothing to have Hamas and these terrorist groups, people from them come to campuses. But if someone who wants to come from Israel and speak on behalf of Israel wants to come, they're basically shut down and things of that nature. And I think that's ridiculous. So I tend to lean towards more Israel's side on that, but I don't think that we should be getting involved at all. Like, it's not our business. And, you know, sadly, I think the AIPAC, which is kind of like the lobbying firm for the Israeli interest, they seem to have as much influence in our politics as any other lobbyist group, right? So when we're talking about Russian influencing the elections and things like that, it's funny how we only take certain countries and mention it, as if every civilized country isn't trying to have influence in our election, both in kind of illegal or shady ways through like possibly hacking and things of that nature, or having trolls post on Facebook like that was some kind of big deal. I can't believe people still buy that was a big story. But then they overlook like kind of what we consider legal lobbying practices and things of that also seek to influence our election. So it's like, why do we arbitrarily judge, right? We say, oh, Russia did it, it was bad. China will ignore. Israel does it, no big deal. You know, if Palestine would do it, it'd be a big deal, or whatever, right? So oh, okay, thanks. But yeah, that's my feelings in a nutshell on Israel and Palestine. Anything else anyone wanted to hear about? I can tell you, like, I put a video up. It's just a minute and a half long. I did get, if you weren't here at the beginning, I did get a new microphone ordered and a new camera. So hopefully the image quality and things like that will be better. I am in the process of trying to have a setup so I could have a person with me physically, right? Like, so two of us in the room and kind of do a back and forth or an interview. I want to get people, the next thing I'm going to try to do, right? There's two types of people I would love to have discussions with. People that disagree. Well, anyone, I guess, to start with. Even if you agree with me, I just think the dialogue works way better. I get tired of hearing me talking, so I can only imagine others do as well. But I really want to talk to people that disagree with me. I think that would be great. And I also want to talk to people that you don't hear from a lot, right? Like, so like my father-in-law is a truck driver, right? And he just started getting interested in, by the way, in the little area I live in, it's amazing how many people since Trump was running for office have become interested in politics. I know tons of people that never voted in their life and now all of a sudden are voting or have an avid interest in politics and things of that nature. So that's one good thing that Trump brought about. And, you know, even though I disliked Obama, you know, if Obama got people on the other end doing the same thing and taking an interest, that's great too. Now, if you're going to take an interest, try to like do your best to be somewhat informed. You know, there's nothing more annoying than seeing people running. I'm not saying I know everything anyway. So don't take this to be like I'm arrogant, but sometimes people don't know the very minimum and they're out there screaming that you're a crappy person because you don't agree with them. So, in fact, I'll give you an example of that. When I was in debate, right, like you would have people all the time, you'd be at these parties and people would be like, oh, you're a debater, let's debate. It's like, whatever. So I had this girl one time, she's at my house and she keeps saying that. Oh, let's debate. And I'm like, okay, finally, what do you want to talk about? And she's like, who did you vote for? Did you vote for Obama? I think this was 2008. And I was just like, or maybe it was 2010. I don't know. It was probably 2008. But I was like, no, I didn't vote for Obama. I voted for Ron Paul. And she's like, oh, you're a racist. You know, you're crappy. And I was like, well, actually, I was against the wars. And she's like, oh, well, what do you mean? Like, the Democrats didn't have anything to do with the war. And I was like, yeah, actually, a bunch of Democrats voted for the war in Iraq. And she's like, yeah, but Bush was the president. I was like, yeah, I get that, but the Democrats voted, you know, they were on board. And she's like, no, but Bush appointed all of Congress. And I was like, wait, what? And she's like, yeah, all of Congress, because Bush was the president, those are all his people. And I was like, so you're telling me that like our two senators, all of our Congress people, those are all appointed by the president, we don't vote for them? She's like, yeah. And I was like, I didn't say it this politely. I used a couple of curse words, but I was like, okay, you need to leave my house right now. And I basically made her leave because I was like, you sat here haranguing me all night because you claimed to be intellectually superior to me and wanted to debate me, and you don't even know the very first thing about what you're trying to talk about. It would be like if I took my car to the shop, you know, and I was like, something's wrong with my car, and they come out and they're like, yeah, it's your transmission, and I was like, no, it's the magic fairy pixie dust. It's out of pixie dust. That's the problem. That mechanic's going to be like, okay, dude, time to move along, right? Like, it's just like, so, you know, if you're going to try to be informed, or if you're going to take an interest, try to be a little informed at least. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to spend a bunch of time. But anywho, I'm rambling on here again. My father-in-law, he started watching the news and stuff a little. And, you know, I asked him, I was like, have you ever seen someone like you on the news, right? Have you ever seen anyone like you ever talking? And he's like, no. Like someone who's just a truck driver. Like politics affects him. Like politics affects us all to some extent. Now, in our general lives, life goes on no matter who gets elected, right? There's no need to get that upset. But, you know, particularly in some jobs, so like jobs that are heavily regulated, politics affects a lot. And a lot of those jobs happen to be jobs that are around the area I live in, like farming, truck driving, things of that nature. So, you know, as a truck driver, like he has a lot to say on regulations and things like that you don't hear. Maybe if you're really looking for it, you'll hear a spokesman from a truck driving industry talk. But how many times do you get to hear the actual driver talk, right? Like, well, what do you think about this? Even if they disagree with me, like, I just think it's absolutely fascinating to listen to people from different backgrounds and different careers discuss this stuff. Because all we ever hear is from, like, professional media and politician types. Like, who cares? I want to hear from other real people, you know? Not to say that those people aren't real, though you wonder sometimes, right? But you know what I mean? So I'm trying to have, people like that, you know, and hopefully I'll have them come on. He particularly has a lot to say about these new electronic driving logs. that all these regulations, it's a mess. Like it just goes to show you. And I've talked to local farmers, like the regulations they'll talk to you about. It's just absolutely crazy. So, yeah, thanks, Big Berg. Yeah, so if no one's got anything else here, I'm gonna be heading out then. Thanks for sticking with me, everyone. And yeah, please, if you haven't subscribed and please do that. And yeah, if you know anyone who might be interested in hearing from me or might want to make fun of me or anything of that nature, feel free to let them know as well. So yeah, I should be putting some more videos up. I'm going to try to live stream Fridays, probably during the day. So look for it probably around noon on Fridays. I'm going to try to start live streaming every week. Hopefully my new equipment will be in by then. So, and if you ever have an interest in that was one last thing I wanted to say. That's the live discussions I hope to be having with people like face to face. But I'm still trying. If someone would be interested in talking to me like during a live stream or pre-recorded video, if you would prefer it. And I don't know if you have to use Google Hangout or what kind of system we would have to set up to be able to get that to work. But if you're interested in that, just contact me on here, a comment section, or my email or whatever. Or if you're on Above Top Secret, my name is Grambler on there. You could hit me up there. And yeah, I would love to talk to people like that online. We can get it worked out. So, all right, everyone, thanks for being with me. Have a good one.